So, Brad, this is my first People of Mulgrave interview, and I'm excited to be the one to get to do it, but I'm also sad because I'm letting our community know that we're doing this interview because you'll be leaving us right at the end of this week.
Which is tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
I know.
So I wanted the chance to ask you a few questions and hear about what your next journey will be. So tell us about your position, how long you've been here at Mulgrave, and how it's changed recently.
So this is my 6th year, so it won't be quite full 6 years when all is said and done. Came here from Think Global School, which was a global traveling school, ran around the world with 15 kids and 10 faculty or something. And came to Mulgrave partly because running around the world is just hard, right? It's pretty grueling. And I wanted to, but maybe more so, I learned an awful lot about education. I kind of felt at Think Global School we had climbed up to the mountain peak, but the weather was going bad and we had to come down. But I had a sense of seeing far into the future. And I thought, I think Global School was such a unique experience, but how do we scale that? How do we replicate some of the things there? And was looking for a place where we could start to do some of that, because I think, as objective as I can be, that's where education has to go. And picked Mulgrave for that reason. I thought it was a school that was going to go places. John Ray was recently appointed head, and dug around and found he was, forward-thinking, ambitious guy with a lot of drive. And Mulgrave was a well-funded school. And not to say that the future of education is entirely dependent on money, but it was getting rid of some of the bureaucratic stuff so we could see what are the real problems in education instead of artificial ones around bureaucracy and money and things like that. And Mulgrave seemed like a great place. So I started here, was hired as the director for educational technology with a sort of a broad mandate to oversee the IT department, but also to work with teachers. So it was a role that stood between IT, teachers, and then school leadership. So as a translator between those three things, how do we take the strategic plan and have IT provision the school to allow the teachers to do the work that we want them to do in teaching and learning in the classroom. And ran that for several years. It was an interesting challenge. I'd been working in a very small school, very nimble, and we could move very fast with just 10 people. And then you come into a school with 800 or 900 students and a faculty of close to 100 or 150 when you include the admin staff and all the rest of it, and it moves much slower than I was used to working with. But that was a really, really important lesson to me. Like, if you want to make a change, you have to understand what change needs to be made, and you have to understand the technical requirements of that change, but you also have to understand how people change. And that's far and away the most difficult problem we deal with. The rest of it is just write a big enough check, and it's just money then. But getting people to change takes time. It turns out it takes about 7 years to implement change in a school. That's what the research is telling us. And I've been here 6 years, and I sort of feel like at this point when I'm leaving the school, we did get to where we wanted to get, which was build this really solid foundation of skills and infrastructure in the school. And in the last couple of years, we created a new role. I'm also wear the hat of director for the Center for Innovation here at Mulgrave.
I think that this epitomizes what we so admire about you, the fact that you are the director for educational technology, someone who's on the forefront of the future, so to speak, and all of these tools, and yet you teach a slow food elective, and yet you talk about literature and you write and you draw. Tell us a little bit about how you see that as being something that all of our students should strive for.
Yeah, I think given that if we believe that the future is uncertain right now, that we really have this disoriented feeling as we go forward, whether we're talking in schools or we're looking at the global political scene right now, or anything else you can possibly imagine. If we're going to be adept at getting through that, I think we have to also be adept at connecting dots from many different places. If we think things are connected the way they used to be, in kind of predictable ways that we would recognize, I think we're fooling ourselves. And if we're going to be innovative, if we're going to cultivate an entrepreneurial spirit in our kids, they have to get used to looking at how do you connect a piece of literature with a piece of food and then a piece of math, for example. And there probably is some connection there that makes perfectly good sense. And so if we can cultivate this dot connecting thing, I mean, it was Steve Jobs, I think, talked about if you're going to be innovative, innovation is about connecting dots and seeing patterns where other people don't. And for me personally, I obviously enjoy food, I enjoy drawing, I enjoy reading and all those things. But I also try to practice them as a discipline, because I think that exercise of looking for things that aren't immediately apparent keeps your mind nimble and limber. And so, that's one of the benefits of an IB program. It is this broad liberal education. I was chatting with some folks yesterday about coding and computational thinking and so forth. And I think Mulgrave's response to that is, to put that in the frame of a much broader liberal education is really, really important. If we focus on things like STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, I think we wind up with problems like we've seen in Brexit and the election of Trump in the United States, which to me come from a culture that is so heavily focused on sort of neutral concepts, numbers and theories and things, that we've forgotten the human side of things and how informative art and music and literature and history and human geography are to how we conduct our lives. We can't be reduced to algorithms. We hear a lot of conversation about the algorithmically driven future. Partly I'm really happy about that. I like that my iPhone figures things out for me, so I don't have to do that. But I want to be able to take that and put it to some kind of use that benefits us, and we need humans to do that. So playing around with a lot of different things is critically important, I think. And it's also just a lot of fun. I couldn't imagine doing the same thing day in, day out. You need to change. It keeps you fresh.
So playing with all of these things has been your job for the last little while here at Mulgrave. But your journey is taking you somewhere else. Speaking of your iPhone and Steve Jobs, can you tell us about your next adventure?
Yeah, really, really excited. And it would have had to be an exciting job to draw me away from Mulgrave, because it's an amazing school. If you're working in Canada, this has got to be one of the best places to work. But the new position, it's a National Development Executive with Apple, and they're looking at engaging at a national level with education leadership on what is the future of education and how does technology impact that, and how does technology help schools move forward into this new world we've been talking about. It's very exciting. It's new for Apple. There's just one other fellow we're going to bring on a team at this point to travel around the country, coast to coast to coast, and see what's happening in education. Part of my job is going to be reconnaissance. How do we understand the problems that leadership faces? I think we've done a good job of understanding the challenges that classroom teachers have and how we might use technology in the classroom. But how do school leaders engage with this? I've presented at a lot of conferences, and invariably when we're talking about using iPads or we're talking about Skyping with kids in other parts of the world, teachers will complain. They say, we'd love to do that, but our leadership doesn't get it. They don't want us to do that, or they're blocking us, and so on. And my first response is to ask them, have you ever been a school leader? Have you ever been a principal? And they haven't. And I said, you have no idea how difficult that job is and how many things they're juggling. So understanding the issues that school leadership has is a personal interest to me. How do we get schools to move forward more and faster? Kind of in short, how do we get them to be like Mulgrave, I think. And I don't think many people really understand that. If there is a conversation going on at that level, it's not a public enough one that the world doesn't hear what school leadership is trying to deal with. And that's what I'm going to try and find out.
It's exciting.
Yeah, really exciting.
We're really excited for you. I know that there are many of us parents and staff who follow you eagerly on social media, from your beautiful breakfast posts on Instagram to some of the writing that you've done, and particularly on your Twitter feed. I understand that's going to change a little bit. So how might we be able to find you and still get to see some of your sketch notes? And
Well, that'll still be there. Food, as I said, is a big part of my life, and slow food, and that's kind of my therapy. I work in the world of technology, which is all electrons and wires and things, and so to get my hands on some bread dough, or roast something over a fire is therapy. That's what I look forward to when I get home. So those will be there, and the sketchnoting thing is the way I try to understand what's going on in my head. It's a picture of what's in my brain. So if people don't mind looking at that, they'll see those kinds of things as well. Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to miss you a lot.
Yeah, I'm going to miss this place. It's strange to be leaving. I guess that's when you want to leave, when you're leaving it kind of on a high note and things are going well. But it's strange to do that at the same time, to say it's time for me to move on. And it's also strange to leave kind of midstream. Usually when I've moved to another school, it's June, and then you start up in the new place in fall. So that's a bit odd. Yesterday, I taught my very last class, and I didn't even realize that when I started. It was at the end of class. I went, oh my gosh, that's probably the last class I'll ever teach in my career. I mean, I might come in and do a one-off thing, but it's not likely that I'll be returning as a classroom teacher. Which I miss. I mean, one of the things that's been really valuable for me, and I hope for Mulgrave too, is the fact that although I'm working with educational technology and I sit on the school leadership team, I'm also a classroom teacher, so I know what the effect of some of these initiatives we're trying out are. Or my kids are guinea pigs for some of this stuff. Let's try using Twitter as a note-taking tool, for example. What happens? And to be disconnected from that, I'm not entirely happy about that. It's hard to know. It's easy to get lost in the high-level discussion about things and forget that at the end of the day, we have to understand and feel what that's like in the classroom, because that's our core business. And we forget that sometimes, that at the end of the day, that's what we're after.
Starting tomorrow, you'll officially be part of our Mulgrave Alumni Association.
That's right, too.
You
yes,
are.
Yeah.
So I certainly hope that you'll answer our invitations and come back to connect with those very students that you've so impacted.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the real treats of working with young people, is to watch them grow. You work in a K-12 school and you see them matriculate through the years. I remember when I went to teaching, I used to work in the hospitality business for a while, and I remember not long after I went back to teaching, and I was driving a rickety old school bus over the Lionsgate Bridge, and one of my customers from the restaurant days, and I worked in high-end restaurants, it was very glamorous and all the rest of it, went zipping by in a Porsche with the top down and his arm around his girlfriend, and her hair's blowing in the wind, and I'm driving this bus with 30 screaming kids in the back, and I thought, for a second, oh my God, what did I just do? And then I thought, I did the perfect move, because I know that at the end of my day, I made a difference, at least for one kid for 15 minutes, but I can point to that moment where what I did made a difference. But maybe this guy did too, but my dad was in banking, and I'm not sure when he was in corporate banking if he came home every day and felt like I made a difference in the world. So you get that, and you get this unbelievable thing that happens when you bump into a former student. I was down at a restaurant in West Van, and one of my students from a previous school is now managing the place and moving up the corporate ladder there. And he came up and he said, I don't know if I ever told you, but I'm taking a business course now, and part of my application was to write an essay about the most influential person in your life. And he said, other than my parents, it was you. And you kind of go, wow, so you don't get that in a lot of businesses. So to come back and see how the kids are, or when, we have alum come through the school, it's wonderful. It's really a rare treat.
Absolutely.
It makes me a very fortunate man.
Well, when you need that again, just come back.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this interview, Brad.
Yeah, thank you.